Good evening, everyone. As chair of the Planning Commission, I hereby call this January 28th Planning Commission meeting to order. And I want to thank you for being here tonight. We are going to, the first thing we need to do is have an approval of our agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda of the January 28th Planning Commission.
We've had an approval. I'm sorry. we have a motion. We need a second. Thank you. I'll get caught up with myself any moment now. Let's take a vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I would like to, at this time, welcome Robert. Would you stand up for a moment? Welcome our newest Planning Commission member, Robert Windsor. So please give him a round of applause. We're sure he came for the pay until he found out it was volunteer work. Until it was zero. Our next item is to have an approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes from the December 10th, 2024 Planning Commission specially called meeting.
Thank you, Michael. A second, please.
I will second it.
Thank you. And a vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you. Under old business, we have had a request to table this until our February 25th Planning Commission meeting. Yes, please do. Thank you.
I would like to indicate that we expect the hearing to take place next month, that we have a site plan that's going to be submitted that's been amended. We will write the staff report, release it to the public, to the Planning Commission, typically a week before the meeting, and the intent is to have the hearing next month. It'll be the only case on the docket too, I believe.
Then I make a motion that we table RZ 24-04, LUP 24-02, the Summit Chase, to the next regularly called meeting in February. Yep. So a motion to table RZ 24-04, LUP 24-02, the Summit Chase item to the next regularly called meeting in February.
I will make that motion.
Second, thank you. A vote? Aye. All in favor, thank you. For those of you who came to deal with that, there are some copies on the back table, which they were there earlier, but I took them off because I wasn't sure if the commissioners needed them. So a copy of their request to table is on the back table if you would like to obtain a copy.
Can you take questions from the floor just real quick? No.
Not really. Not yet.
Shane got it.
Huh?
Mr. Lanham's talking to him.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions after the meeting too, if you'd like. Sure. Okay? Yes, sir.
Before you start, I have something I need to read.
Go ahead.
This will take a minute to read, so bear with me. I want to, again, thank you all for being here tonight. Please be advised that the applications that come before the Planning Commission for consideration have already gone through a highly detailed and incredibly tedious process that's been affected by our Planning and Development Department. These meetings provide an opportunity for public exposure and comment, whether for or against any particular application. In order to assure that everyone has an equal opportunity to be heard and to minimize distractions, I ask you to silence and or turn off any electronic communication devices that you may have. Please note that this is an official public meeting at which important city business is conducted and that we are actually engaged in a legal process. The procedure we will utilize is as follows. The Director of the Planning and Development Department, Jason Thompson, who just walked out the door, We'll begin by first presenting to all of us an overview of the project that has been applied for and the specific request being made by the applicant. He will then respond to questioning from us. Up here is the commission. The applicant will then be afforded 15 minutes to make their presentation. Any allotted time not used for presentation will be reserved for rebuttal, if necessary, and to respond to questions and concerns as voiced by you, the public. Upon completion of that presentation, we will open the floor for public comment, first to those wishing to state their support for the project, and then to those who claim opposition. A total of 15 minutes will be allowed for all public comments. Accordingly, please be focused and direct with your comments so that others are able to speak. If there are common concerns, please consider utilizing a spokesperson. By remaining in this room at this meeting, the public hereby agrees to the following. Outcries, clapping, and any other form or method of group behavior is neither allowable nor acceptable, so kindly refrain from doing so. When you come forward to the podium to speak, you should first provide your name and address for all to hear. You will direct your comments to myself and to the commission, not to the applicant or to any other person in attendance. You may only speak once regarding the application at hand, so please be as precise, thorough, and prompt as possible. Kindly present your comments in a fair and reasonable manner, and be sure to focus only on the topic or issue at hand. Be mindful that anger and poor attitudes have no place in these chambers. Again, please be as brief and to the point as possible, keeping in mind the time limits we are working with, and that there may well be others who also wish to speak. If commission members ask questions of you, it will not be deducted from the 15-minute time allotment. Upon closing of the public comments, the applicant may, as previously mentioned, use their remaining time for rebuttal and response. Any questions? That was easy. Thank you. Mr. Thompson, will you please come forward and let us know what we're looking at this evening?
I will, and tonight in front of you have a special use permit for a wall mural. And I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. It's a complicated subject matter. Long story short, we got an application for the graphic on the sign of Snell's Pharmacy as a wall sign. Due to what we believe the definition of a wall sign is, we denied that application based on a sizing requirement over the maximum size. In response, we conferred with the city attorney on how to move forward, and he informed us that the best way to move forward and to drive a decision by mayor and council is to have the applicant apply for a mural SUP, which is why we're here. Unfortunately, after reading the definition of a mural and also the requested variance from said mural to, and I'll read you the variance that they've requested, is to be allowed to basically strike a portion of the definition that the mural painting is an architectural element of any given space or harmoniously incorporated into the picture. Basically that we understand that to mean painted or placed on the existing surface without a protrusion or any addition, which is actually under the sign definition. So in a matter of being conservative and a concern for precedent set down the road based on what we have in front of us, we recommend denial of the SUP, minded that the mayor and council will still take this up in their next regularly scheduled public hearing in a month. So very simple, based on precedents and our own governing documents, we recommend denial.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Thompson? We will need a motion. Oh, is the applicant here? Okay, please come forward, sir. Sorry. Didn't know you were here. With apologies.
Hello, Michael Briscoe, 2571 Church Street. How are y'all today? Great. Good. Yes, so I just first I want to thank y'all for the opportunity to present this request. I'm Michael Briscoe, I'm the owner of Snell's Pharmacy. It's been in my family since 1956. make it one of, if not the oldest business still thriving in Snellville. You know, and in keeping with the improvements that's been trying to go on in the area with the Tileman and the Grove, I just decided to incur the expense myself of updating the look of my pharmacy with a new color and scheme and a mural, and which has received many positive comments from the community. I mistakenly accepted the assurance of my contractor that the painting of a building and putting something on your building did not require me to be here. So, you know, I wish I wouldn't have listened, and I wish I'd have known, or I'd have went through the right channels to start with. But, you know, but it's done. So my mistake and apologies, but I am committed to the continued success of Snellville and Snell's Pharmacy, and I feel the updated look and the mural, that it's an asset to the downtown community. I mean, all these communities are coming, and they have murals in them, and they have things, you know, and I do want to look, I was looking through Jason's, the definitions. And I see, and for what I see a discrepancy. It says, because the graphic has been painted and applied to a smooth concrete substrate material that was then applied directly to the brick wall, with the graphic not being applied directly to the brick, that's, you know, so that's the variance. Well, that's not exactly how I looked at it. It was applied directly to the product. All they did was smooth it out with a little bit of concrete so that the artist would have a smooth area to work upon. It's not like we made a sign and came up there and attached it to the store. It can't come down. It was just smooth concrete that was put up there. That's the variance from the substrate. And I just saw it, just the way I read it, I just want to make it clear. I mean, it was nothing that was done before and applied to the store after the fact. It was just a place that was made smooth for the muralist to come along and do her artwork. So that's what I've done. I think Snell's Pharmacy has been here for forever. We do a great job. I mean, with the council, yeah, we rely. I hope y'all know that we do a good job, bent over backwards for people have for going on 70 years. So we're just trying to do right and look good and improve our business and improve the look of the city. And we hope that y'all will take this under consideration and maybe pass this thing for me. Do y'all have any other questions for me about it?
So then, I just want to be clear, so this was not painted on some other piece of foam board or wood and then applied to the wall?
No, sir.
The wall was smooth with concrete, and then this was painted on
It was smooth with
directly on the
concrete and
smooth
trowels,
concrete.
and then they painted the trim around it to make it look as such, and then I had a muralist come out for 2 days straight and free painted on that wall on that smooth surface where they had smoothed it for her to paint. That's correct.
So I've gone by and looked at the sign, or mural, or whatever we're going to call it, just to be neutral at the moment, and it does appear to me that it actually is something that's been attached to the brick wall that sits out 3/4 to 1 inch from the wall, and that it is not actually the wall.
Well, but it was applied to give them a smooth
Surface.
place to paint on, but it was not applied, it was not painted and then hung up there on the wall.
Okay.
It cannot be removed. I mean, you know, it is concrete that is on the building, that is on the brick.
So what's been done is that the wall has been built out.
The wall
to a-
was smoothed up just for the painter to paint
Right,
on.
but
yeah.
it does sit out 3/4 or so of an inch.
It comes out a little bit, yeah, that's fine. I'm not sure of the exact.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners, for this gentleman? Anything else you'd like to comment on? You still have some time.
No, I think that's what I had to say.
Thank you.
All right.
We will now open the floor to public comment. Would anybody like to come forward and speak in favor of this? Please state your name and address.
Tricia Rollins, 2088 Harbor Oaks Drive. I run SNAP, which is a group of neighborhoods that are connected, and the talk of this facility has been on the positive side for Snellville. You get more positive talk about this sign than you do that Tomlin over there. You got chickens on the porch over there. You got a mural down 78 that looks like crap for the entrance to our city. But you want to pick on this sign right here, which is a mural. All I did was put the concrete there and painted on it. What's wrong with having something that looks good for our city? You can come in here and you can put apartments everywhere, but somebody comes in and puts something decent in here, then you're voting against it. it's got me. I don't know. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? If that is a no, then I will close the public hearing and we'll entertain a motion. Anybody would like to make a motion regarding this subject?
Based on the applicant's description of what occurred, I think that this meets the definition of a mural, and I would make a motion to approve SUP 25-01.
Is there a second?
Based on the new information that we had, and I agree that it is a mural versus a sign, I will second that.
Let's take a vote. Those in favor? That's 3 in favor. Vote against?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. 2 against and 1 abstinence.
Point of clarification, abstaining is a no vote under the city, right?
All right, so we have 3 affirmatives and 3 no votes. John, what do we do next?
Three votes in favor of the motion to approve, two votes to deny, with 1 abstention, which is a no vote. So the motion
It's
to
a tie.
approve carries.
I make a motion, we give it to the council to approve or disapprove.
It's already, motion's already made.
Yeah.
Can I comment on that?
Hang on a second, let them.
Motion carries under that, but the abstention is basically just subtracted out. Becomes 5 voters.
Okay.
We'll send it up.
The motion carries and will be forwarded to the city council. Thank you. Mr. Thompson, you'll come back and visit us for our next round.
A little more straightforward, to me at least. It's very simple. There's a wall and some driveways, not spackle and give me this all day. Give me this all day. All right. Hold on. Wasn't entirely ready. The sign got me all messed up. Our mural.
All shook up.
All right, John. Get that sheen off of there. Get a little closer. All right. Here we go. In front of us today, for the next item, we have rezoning case 25-01, our first rezoning for 2025. They've also requested a few variances. This is on the 3100 block of Rosebud Road. If you can see kind of to the right, you got the Rosebud, you've got Action Awards, been there a long time, a couple of residents there to the south. There's a big creek on the western edge of the property, and then to the north is the under review for permit approval development that was approved, say about 12 months ago for a mixed use, mixed residential development. This will be to the south of that and share that driveway. Furthermore, it's going to be 65 units as indicated on the site plan. The property owner is Sincoin Investments, and the applicant's contact will be here speaking later tonight is Jeff Timler of Split Silt Properties. So just a little basic rundown on the property. We got a 65-unit single-family attached townhome development for sale. on a 17.44 acre site with a gross density of 3.73 units per acre. And while I know a number seems low, to consider all of the space that they're using to calculate. So a large portion of the property is unusable due to hydraulic and grading challenges, so the bulk of the development is pushed up to the usable land, as you can see there. We went over the history. So basically, we're requesting to only rezone to RTH, given that the Highway 78 East Activity Node is the land use classification that exists, that was changed, I'd say 5 years ago, to facilitate this last portion of development, redevelopment around the core of the 78 and Rosebud intersection. This is what we believe to meets the comprehensive plan recommendations for the existing character area and serves as a transitional zoning district for the residences most adjacent to, and then the intensity and uses as we creep up towards 78. Action Awards is basically like a trophy type, award type place, classified as an industrial use, more like a warehouse. There's not a lot of crazy activity going on there. It's kind of an outlier as far as the zoning goes, but it's been there for so long. It's been a part of Snellville for a good while now. They have provided some building elevations as well. Just your standard fun plan book stuff, not much to see there. And as far as detail, let me get you some pictures real quick. Hold on. Here we go. Some just sample elevations of what they're trying to do. You've got some stone products mixed in with fiber cement board in the form of board and batten, regular like T9, I'm not sure exactly what you call it, shape, different entrances with changing architectural features to create, to take away that modular look that you see a lot of times with townhomes. They will be required to vary that throughout the property to create architectural diversity. We will approve the plan and the plan book prior to them receiving a building permit if they are approved. Here's the rears. All of them come featured with a 2-car garage, a driveway that's long enough, meets code at 22 feet or longer. Something that is specific and new to Snellville in regards of the site plan design, and these are just basic elevations, is the introduction of the rear alleys. You have a major corridor here, and we're actually modifying the UDO to accommodate and require rear alleys in the future. This was not a requirement at a time, but something that we've heard from council over and over that they want to have. So the applicant was able to provide the rear alleys. All the cars will access their homes here, come out on their whatever one they use, head out, and it shares a drive with the townhome portion of this development as well. So one curb cut as dictated by DOT, because we all know what that intersection looks like right now. There will be, outside of regular traffic generated, it's a smaller subdivision, 65 lots, doesn't do enough to generate a full-scale traffic study. They did provide one. If you'd like to read, was anything surprising in here or anything, levels of service that dropped? Again, it's considered small in traffic study standards. Anything under 200 doesn't require a traffic study per the code unless we dictate it. So with the basic design, we showed you some architecturals, explained the site plan. They do have a couple of detention ponds on site. Those are located obviously at the lower grades. There's one adjacent to each cul-de-sac. And then the only difference, and it's also part of a variance request, is to allow for the front entry here where they could not achieve the rear entry due to buffer standards setbacks, and ultimately just some rough topography and grades to get there. So we consider that, given the expanse, that's appropriate. We do have a variance number 2. Variance number 1 they requested was not required. Variance number 2, section 401-5, 10B, residential curbing. Basically to allow a rollback curb instead of a hard edge curb where there will be some tightness on the drive where you might need the ability to come up the curb and come down without knocking your hubcaps off or damaging your rims or whatever may happen. So it's pretty standard to provide rollback curbs in those circumstances. They do still convey water and do everything a hard right angle curb will do, but there's a little more flexibility there for vehicular travel if they need it. We recommend approval. We found a couple of variances that the applicant didn't request that I want to make sure is correct. One was the street width, including the 30 feet to be measured back of curb. Right now it shows 27 excluding, without 27 including back of curb. We believe that the applicant won't have any issues applying, correcting that. We'll let him speak to that a little bit more. And then they've asked to reduce the size of the planter strips down to 2.5 to give more room for the sidewalks and ultimately the rear alleys. When you see a design like this, just a little planning theory, if when you add the additional drives and then the alley you've added on, the driveways, the alleys, you got another 40 feet on each side, so everything gets really tight. And we feel like if you're able to get the trees in, they can be robust. That 2.5 feet is good there because there's going to be less vehicular traffic on the top. The sidewalk will still be there. We feel like it's appropriate given the total design and layout. And that's it. We've got those really just one denial, a couple approvals, and one not needed. So I'll just read through the request and how we would recommend them. We recommend approval of RZ 25-01, Single Family Residential District to RTH, Townhome Residential District. Represent the variance approval of Section 401 regarding residential curbing to allow the rollback curb. B, denial of variance to allow for the 27-foot back of curb. We only approved 30 feet now. It's been something that the council's been very consistent with over time. So we recommend denial. And then we also recommend approval to reduce the planter strip from 5 to 2.5 to allow for the similar plantings. And it's pretty standard. We looked at the county's regs. Most of theirs is 2.5 too. So it's in general accordance with what everybody else is doing out there. We just like a little bigger space when we can get it because it allows for more robust tree growth over time. We have attached a few conditions to the property. Standard, you have to build the plan or the project per the plan. Property Owners Association, private streets. The townhomes will be deed restricted and only allowed for up to 10% of the units to be used as non-occupied rental units, which is in compliance with most other single-family districts. We've got a privacy fence requirement. We've got a minimum requirement for the sidewalk where it is on Rosebud, a little bit bigger to match the project up the street. And then we also, just for an expectation for the developer, indicated the driveway lengths are to be 22 feet. Stormwater management ponds, if they can, make them look more like a water feature. Sometimes topography and other things don't allow that. Also, we set the minimum for the 19 feet on the width, a 20-foot minimum setback between buildings, which is part of the code but not expressly indicated on this plan, so we want to make sure the expectation is there as well. And no adult entertainment uses and no huge signs bigger than 15 feet or larger than 225 square feet. So pretty boilerplate conditions. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have or general about the project.
Anybody have any questions? All
right.
Robert? No questions? Thank you. Okay. I would like to invite the applicant up. Mr. Timler, please come forward. You have 15 minutes, sir.
Try to be brief. Good evening, Planning Commission members. Jeff Timler, Split Silk Properties, P.O. Box 1725, Loganville 30052, representing Cinecoin Investments LLC this evening. And I'll try not to regurgitate a lot of what Jason stated, but we appreciate all of his hard work, and we agree with a majority of his recommendations this evening. As you know, we've been working on this for quite some time. The property to the north was rezoned about a year ago, and the council specifically added a condition of zoning that we share a driveway. When I say we, Cinecoin Investments share a driveway with the property to the north. It makes sense on a number of different levels, and so we're definitely in agreement with that. Obviously, the transportation is an issue. It's already bad out there, and the traffic studies, both this one and the prior one with the development to the north, it's hopefully it's a catalyst for the Gwinnett DOT and the state DOT to actually make some substantial improvements there, because it's not good now, and it's not going to get any better until they do something there. And again, we hope this will be that catalyst. There's several benefits, obviously, to this development. The value of the project it's currently assessed at $200,000. It'll gross to $27 million with this development. That's just using the price on each unit. The development cost will probably make it over $30 million. And because we're doing the alleyways, the council has been asking for that for a while now, and Jason mentioned they're going to codify the ordinance to require that on new developments, and it does increase the development costs, and of course it's going to increase the cost of the actual units, which is probably a good thing for everybody. The units per acre is only 3.73 units per acre. The medium density is 8 units per acre, so we're half of what we're really allowed. And over half of the property is going to be undeveloped. Roughly over 50% of the property is going to be open space, and because of the topo and because of the creek there. Again, we're in agreement with the staff's recommendation for approval. We do have a couple things we'd like to consider, and you may not want to get into the weeds this evening with this, and we might be able to work it out between now and the council meeting. But Jason mentioned variant C regarding the width. The reason why we requested that is because the development to the north, when that was granted, they were actually afforded that reduction as well. And of course, the townhome development to the north doesn't have alleyways, and because we have alleyways, we really don't need that extra width, if you think about it, because alleyways are actually 16 feet wide. So we've got plenty of ingress and egress, and all the parking and access for the residents will be to the rear. So we'd like that. We'd like to get that variance if possible, but we also understand staff's obligation to the code. In regards to conditions 2 and 3, where the staff proposes that these be public streets, alleys, and sidewalks. The problem with that is, again, the alleyways is going to substantially cost a lot more for development versus a traditional development. And I know that's not your problem, it's our problem, but it's also a problem of the future residents. If you're a resident there and your HOA fees are 5 times more than they should be because you have to pay for a public street, I don't think that's fair. Now, if it was a gated community, yes, okay, but this is not a gated community. Anybody can access these streets, these alleyways. So therefore, it should be it's public infrastructure. It should be paid by the public and not just the homeowners in there. So we'd like that to be stricken, at least the streets, the alleyways, and the sidewalks. The retention ponds, that's standard to be privately maintained. And we're also adding a clubhouse too, a 2,500 square foot clubhouse, which again, the HOA dues will pay for maintenance and all that. So it's a nice amenity to have for just 65 units. Condition number 5, I think if some of you have been on the Planning Commission for a while, maybe you understand that wooden fences can be a maintenance issue. And there really hasn't been a solution to that problem. There's a couple things we like to suggest. Instead of restricting it to shadow box, we would say we would like to ask for that to be a minimum of a shadow box would. And if the owner can propose something that's more sustainable and less maintenance, yet still has the same aesthetic value during the land disturbance permit, and Mr. Thompson is agreeable to that, then we would like to give him the ability to approve an alternative type material. Again, he knows, he's been listening to these complaints over his tenure here. Wooden fences obviously become issues. And we'd also would suggest that the HOA maintain the fence, because if you have individual homeowners only maintain their own little section, then it's going to be a mess. It's just not going to work. So we would like to add that. That wasn't in the condition, but I think it makes sense to have the HOA pay for that and maintain that, but not the streets and alleyways and sidewalks. Also, condition number 7, I really understand the intent on having 22 feet for a driveway for front entries. Okay, when you're talking about front entries, the reason for that is because you don't want people parking and blocking the sidewalk, right? So you want to have enough, you want to have 22 feet. Well, in this case, we have rear entries, and we don't need the 22 feet. We actually want to stagger the units. We want to stagger them to 20 and 22. So every other unit we would like to have, and it shows on the site plan. I'll show you real quick how these are staggered. And the reason why I want them staggered is because we don't want to have it just be a big wall of townhouses. You want to have it kind of have a little bit of architectural features in terms of how the site's laid out. If you look closely at plans, you see how they kind of go in and out. And so therefore we would like to have the ability to go 20 feet and then 22 feet. So if you have a car parked there, you're still not going to be backing into the alleyway. Now, obviously for the front entry ones, you worry about these because you don't want people blocking the sidewalks, right? That's why we have over 22 feet here. So we don't have to worry about that. That's why council historically has recommended at least 22 feet for a driveway. And there's a lot of history to that. So I think with our option here, we'll be able to meet the intent, and not to mention there's no sidewalks and alleyway to block anyway, which is where everybody's going to be, driving into. With that said, I think I covered most of our requests, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'd like to have you go back to the comment about public streets.
Yes, sir.
Would you go through that part again of what you said and what you would like to have happen?
Yes. Well, the condition staff's recommended is that, and this is not in the code because it's a condition. I mean, the code speaks that all public infrastructure shall be maintained by the city, but the condition stipulates that the HOA, basically all the homeowners, are responsible for the public infrastructure. It's not a private street. When I say public infrastructure, that means the homeowners are responsible for the streets, the sidewalks, and the alleys, which is accessible by everybody in the city of Snellville and Gwinnett County, essentially. And so that would drive up your HOA dues tremendously, because if you know how much a road costs to repave it, it's extremely expensive, albeit it might be in 10 or 12 years, depending upon the length of the asphalt, how long it lasts. But again, it's a tremendous expense for the homeowner that is paid for already in their taxes. Now, if they were getting a reduction in their taxes, that'd be one thing, but they're not. They're being taxed just like you and I are, and so it's kind of like a double taxation if you really think about it.
Well, it would seem to me, unless I don't understand the layout of this, that this is technically, gated or not, a private community. There's nowhere to go. I mean,
it's not.
Everybody from Snellville can go ahead and drive up and down your streets, but there's nowhere to go except to drive by to look at the homes.
Yep.
So it seems to me that lacking a destination, I could be,
Well, there's actually a lot of examples in Snellville where there's one street subdivisions like this, or there's actually two streets because you have two cul-de-sacs. But yeah, if it was gated, yes, that typically defines a private street. And even though this code requires you to build private streets to public standards, it's not gated, and therefore it's still a public roadway. And we're building them to public standards. And so that's all we ask for, is be treated like other developments in Snellville.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anybody?
All right.
How much time does Mr. Timler have left?
He used 7 minutes and 25 seconds.
So you were brief and succinct.
Thank you.
I will now open this to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to address in favor of this development? Please come forward, state your name and your address. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak against this project? Please come forward and state your name and your address, please.
My name is Hartley Fallbeim. I live at 3278 Brooks Drive, Loganville 30052.
Thank you.
And I don't really have opposition, but I have some negative comments. My house is there. I'm concerned about this stormwater accumulation, stagnant water sitting right by my house, mosquitoes and all that concern. Sometimes stagnant water doesn't smell very good if the wind is from the right direction. And I don't know the codes on these, but I would like very much for the development to be responsible for treatment of that area for mosquitoes and whatever this pond generates. That's objection number one. Objection number two, fence. Mentioned a 6-foot tall opaque fence. I've seen fences that look like they're supposed to be opaque, but they're really not. So does the code say what an opaque fence really looks like? I would not want to be looking through to this settlement pond, and people from this subdivision are going to be out. If it's made to be like a water feature, they're going to be out, you know, playing around that too. So I just think that would adversely affect my property if the fence isn't really opaque and that settlement pond or whatever it is allowed to be stagnant and mosquito and stinky. Any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to speak in opposition to this development? Your name and your address, please.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Megan Pallich. My address is 3224 Brooks Court. I live just a little bit away from that picture. I have another question regarding the detention pond. So from my understanding, these ponds already exist. This one has a broken dam, and right now these drain into a creek that runs behind these houses and into Johnson Lake, which is the lake that is privately owned by my HOA. And I would like to know what the developer's plans are for mitigating and preventing silt and runoff that would come into our lake, and we would have to pay to get it fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in opposition?
Not so much in opposition, but can you tell me where the dumpsters are located in this complex?
We will
Anybody?
ask. I don't know, but we can ask.
Mr. Tillman, can you tell?
He'll address it.
Okay. I've lived behind Snellville Pavilion for 22 years. I listen to the dump trucks slam dumpsters at 6:30 in the morning. They're not supposed to be there until 7. Try getting them not to come. I would hope that you would protect these residents that are all along this line here from the noise. If that's all tree line through there, I have tree lines, but I can see the back of Snellville Pavilion clearly. But there should be barriers around the trash areas, and that the timing is decent for the residents that live around that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak in opposition?
Evening, folks. How are you doing today? I'm Robert Brainerd at 1555 Timberline Trace. Not so much opposition, it's just very cloudy right here. And I'm looking from a traffic perspective because there are about 67 homes, roughly 67 homes right over there, 2-car garages. So what is that going to be? 130 cars traveling back and forth on a daily basis. You combine that, you just go right down the road there with Rosebud, you got Soleil there. Soleil, if you combine the two together on Rosebud, that has 265 units they intend. Look at the traffic going right on to 78 over here on Rosebud. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to hightail it, look through cut-throughs. What cut-through? Brooks Drive. They're going to go right on down, trying to get to 78. Oops, there's not a light there. What are they going to do? They're going to cut right on over Summit Chase Drive. We're looking at the Autobahn here. That's it. That's why I think a transportation study, what this gentleman said earlier, might be warranted. I'm not a Luddite. I think it would be nice to have some units and everything, but let's look at the traffic, because we don't really need a cluster, you know what. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry Wiggs, 2210 Stockton Walk Lane, Snellville, Georgia. My question and concern is, are these retention ponds or detention ponds? Because there is a difference there. The other issue that I would like to look into is, with all the grading and all the developments that's been approved, how many trees are going to be taken down? With this density, there will be no trees and you have to replant on that. That means you got a lot of runoff to the creek. I used to do silt fence and erosion control work. I've yet to met a developer in the last 40 years that could fully control that, except on DOT jobs. The other question is there was talk about the 6-foot fence. Does that 6-foot fence encompass, where does that 6-foot fence encompass? Because the gentleman had stated, or the lady, about people coming over, children especially, there has to be adequate fencing, long-term adequate fencing around those ponds to keep children from getting in there. Because over a period of time, it does fill up. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak in opposition to this project? Please come forward.
How you doing? My name's William Scales, 3316 Classic Drive. I'm in the Summit subdivision, and my fear is that runoff from all this concrete is going to end up in our lake. Our lake is already burdened with repairing the dam. I want to know if they're going to contribute financially to the repair of that dam, because there will be runoff from this property into that lake. Also, the soot or the silt that's building up, are they going to help with the dredging of that lake? Because right now I'm under the impression that that's a watershed. It needs to stay. What are we going to do about it? We're already going through some issues with them trying to put another subdivision within our subdivision. This is a major problem in the long run. Right now, we're looking at tax dollars. Later on, we're looking at liability. So I would suggest looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in opposition to this project? Do you want to comment, or you want me to ask Jeff to come up? Thank you.
Code-related standpoint for the city. Let's start with detention ponds, just so we can understand how those are governed. Those are governed through the Georgia EPD, through the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, which comes down through local water planning regions, and the requirements for water quality and detention are set in the feds and trickled all the way down through the county, through the city, for minimum standards. The county just adopted their new model code, which the city basically piggybacked on, which was based on the state model code. The model code requires legally that any sediment, water, or anything that is generated on this site be retained, treated, and released at a rate that's not more than what it would be in a forested condition, meaning that once this is in place, there'll be curb and gutters on all the impervious surfaces. There'll be an infrastructure built within the roads, within the curbs, that all lead and ultimately will release in a rain event. They're actually designed for a 100-year storm to accommodate that, and then even a little bit more. That's what dictates the size of the pond, the depth of the pond, and then the rate, and I think that's important. So it's calculated to release water back into the system, which is the existing creek, which does run into Johnson Lake. And I would argue now that the development they'll have to repair the existing lake, bring it up to code, and any new things they build will have to be built and designed and approved, as built approved, to control the water, the sediment, and that's basically what retention ponds are. They bring it all in, it settles, the time the suspension of the particles drops, and it releases clean water out as dictated. Like, they have to run a hydrographic study, the engineer has to approve it, all the curves, all that's over my head. But basically, by law, federal law, that comes down the pipe all the way to Snellville, they have to retain that. So it is designed to function as a forested development. So the water is actually, I would argue, will be better. It'll be controlled. So that's taken care of from a codification standpoint. That's a requirement every development in Snellville. Residential, commercial, anything that generates water, you have to take care of your own water. It's only fair, right? And silt. And a lot of times, especially in developments like that, they spend a lot of money complying with those regulations, because just like anything else, environmentally sensitive over time, those have ratcheted up more and more and more. And I would argue that detention for design and then ultimately even development is a major portion of a project's cost these days. So it is accounted for in our code, and before they can even build, they have to satisfy those plan requirements. In regards to wet detention or retention versus a dry pond, typically the definition of a wet pond is subjective. It has to only have a certain amount of water that's retained over time. And sometimes those are appropriate. We ask that they do it to the development up front, but the topography doesn't allow for anything but a small basis of water at the bottom. So it's not going to function as a, and I would bet that these won't be able to either, as a feature. We always put that in there in case it can, because we believe it adds more value than an empty dry pond. In that case that you do have wet or extended detention, you have to plant certain plants in the bottom, biomass that soaks the water up, and then it helps to even clean the water even more. So that's something new that they've introduced to kind of clean it, filter the water, because we know certain plants and reeds they can take the toxins out, and then they release the good stuff out. So doesn't mean that these will be wet detention. It could if it presents. We don't know that yet. We don't know until we see the grading plan. That other one's like 30 feet deep. They had to get it that deep to catch the grade, and they're going to have some grade issues here, so we don't know yet. The requirement now is to make it nice if they can. So Johnson Lake is protected. I believe we've got a vested interest in that lake too. I believe, and I'll allow the applicant to speak, this will have trash service. I don't believe there will be any dumpsters on the property. Is that correct? So just regular residential trash service. And from what I understand, that will be on the rear alley. So there will be trash truck at some point on that bottom rear alley, because that's where we put the trash cans. That's what alleys are for, to hide, to make the front nice, service in the rear. Traffic on 78, they did provide a traffic study. Nothing more than Rosebud and 78 are messed up. The county has to do something there. The city cannot facilitate an improvement there. Rosebud is a county road. Highway 78 is a state road. All we can do is say, hey, we got these people coming in, make the improvement. That one's been needing improvement for 15, 20 years, a long time, and we all know that Rock House has kind of been that impediment for a long time. The trees removal, typically in a development like this, in order to meet the stormwater regulations and catch grade, they do take them out and replant. Not always. We do have stringent landscaping codes that requires any removal of specimen or special trees be placed at a multiplier greater than normal planting. You take out a 25-inch tree, you put in a bunch of trees. Sometimes it can't be avoided. A lot of times it's cheaper to leave the big tree by design to build around it. Sometimes it's not, you just can't. And you see that a lot with the stormwater requirements require grade, and that really is what drives the design of the property. So I think, oh, one more thing, the fence, we actually wrote a condition, Mr. Dennis did, to provide a shadow box fence or one that is ultimately opaque. We had the same thing as the resident was concerned about. You have these dog-ear fences with gaps, you see right through them. And that would be for the perimeter fence, where I believe would be connected to the two residential structures, or the two residential properties and Action Awards. Is that correct, John? Is that where the fence is indicated? There's 3 parcels. I can't see the parcels on here because it's the rendering. I believe it's this southern boundary. Correct. Okay, so fence, it can be, I think the applicant requested that it be an opaque material approved. I'm okay with the plastic or the PVC or whatever it is. If it does last a little longer than wood, then that's, opaque. Any fence is going to require maintenance over time, and I believe it's probably pertinent for the HOA to be responsible for that as well. Typically, individual home ownership would not lend well to the maintenance of that fence. And what was one more thing? Fence, shadow box, maintenance, mitigation, silting, trash service, traffic. I think, was there anything else? Okay.
Jason.
Yes, sir.
Who maintains the streets in the townhomes to the northwest of this? The ones closer towards Cooper? No.
I think these are public streets, and
but the townhomes that are
right over here.
Yep. Who maintains those streets?
Yeah, those are public, aren't they? So there's a bigger history there. There's public, private. There's public streets with gates up right now too that we have in Snellville. So we've done it a bunch of different ways over time. In the past, the council has asked that these kind of singular use serving streets that don't connect to any other city streets are private for the same reason that it becomes a large expense, and that's what we've done in the past. So I won't argue that there are some other developments, townhome developments, that was built in 2007, the one we're talking about, but mostly historical in the past 5 or 10 years. It's been a private street issue because of what we've dealt with public streets behind gates after the fact. So that's just been a standard condition. I understand the argument and I get it. So that's why it's in there. We have to remain consistent with our conditions.
Any other questions for Jason? Mr. Chimler, your turn again, sir. How much time does he have? About 8 minutes? 7.5?
Yeah, I should be brief because Jason took care of most of it, I think. There was one comment about the mosquitoes potentially in the pond. Of course, HOA, we will be happy to have a condition that HOA is responsible if there's any mosquito abatement requirement. That's no problem. I doubt there will be because the ponds are typically designed to drain. If they're not wet detention, they're designed to drain. And they do handle, as Jason mentioned, water quantity and quality. So there's two things. You should just be quantity, but now they also just as quality. This is also in the Big Haynes Creek watershed, and which means instead of a 50-foot buffer and a 75-foot impervious setback, this is a 100-foot buffer on both sides of the stream and a 150-foot impervious setback. So that's why you have such a large gap. Not to mention the topo is not great there, but this is because of the Big Haynes Creek watershed. We have tremendous buffers in comparison to most. So those buffers are intended to filter any sediment or anything that does come out of the pond as well. So it's actually being filtered twice if you think about it. Jason mentioned the trees. They have a tremendous landscape ordinance. You can barely see target because of the trees have grown up over the years. I mean, the landscape ordinance is amazing, has been nationally recognized. We talked about the dumpsters. Yeah, there's not going to be any of those.
I do have a question regarding garbage trucks.
Yes, sir.
They come in. How will they turn around? I don't.
Well, that'll definitely have to be looked at. I mean, it looks like all the alleys connect except for that northern one, and so they might have to back in, and back in from the main thoroughfare and going about that way, reverse ways. But the other ones they can just drive right through because they're.
Well, I see that, but I can see that there's one spot where you can't.
Yes, sir.
You can't move forward.
Right. Yeah, they'd have to back in.
And you can't come in from that.
No, sir. And they may have to redesign that. This is all conceptual, obviously. So it'll definitely be looked at. Jason and John are really good at catching those things. Let's see. One more thing. Mr. Fonbaum mentioned the fence, going down towards his property line. So his property line is right here. This is where his house is right here. Okay. And, the condition is to run the fence all the way from Rosebud, all the way down here, all the way. So, that requires a lot of disturbance all the way down here. We could, if you want us to, stop the fence right here. Then you save, having to have a skid steer come through here and knock down trees to put in a fence. So do you want a natural buffer, or do you want us to have to come in there and tear down trees that have been there for a long time, or to stop the fence here? That's an option. Something to think about. Because he's got a considerable amount of vegetation between his house. If you look where his house is on this plan, you can see where his house is right there. You can see where his house is, and this vegetation here, that's his property, but then there's also vegetation between here. So if we go in here to tear down a bunch of vegetation and put in a fence, that's fine, but it's going to reduce those trees. And of course, we do have to replant some trees. It'll take some time, obviously, for trees to be replanted, to grow back. And I believe that covers all the issues that everybody brought up. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Only because of the safety issue. Detention ponds in any residential area are required to have a fence around the pond, too, for safety. And 4 to 6 feet, depending. So each pond, because it's residential, we don't want kids in there either. It'll be protected just for safety.
Jason, well, since you're up there, if the planning commission and the mayor and council say we want a opaque shadow box fence, does a citizen have the right to say, I don't want this fence behind my house, can he negotiate that with the builder? Or does he have to
Sure,
come to the city and get permission for them not to build a fence?
No, well.
How does that work for the citizen?
And we got some time from here to the next time to work that out. But if we say, y'all gotta put a fence down, and there's a condition, and the council votes on it, it becomes legislation, it becomes a law. So the only way to undo that is to come back and change it. So if we catch it on the front end, and there's an agreement with the property owner, whatever that may be, we can condition that in, and that's what it'll be held to. So we got some time to talk about it and see what's best, because I agree, there will be some disturbance there, but whatever, obviously whatever the citizen or the neighbor feels best about, they can work with the developer, and ultimately council can make the call. It sounds like there won't be an issue to working it out. We just need a little more time.
You happy to answer any questions? I think I'm completed, and you happy to answer any questions?
Commission? Michael, I'm going to leave it up to you to take the next step.
I make a motion to approve RZ 25-01. Hang on, I got to finish the.
He's gotta do something else.
I got to, with recommendations and denials as proposed by staff A, B, C, and D. So the denial of C, the street width variation. Under conditions, striking the word streets from number 2. I think those should be city maintained. That seems like a high burden for the residents to have to maintain their streets over time. $200,000 house, you don't have $20,000 spare dollars to pitch in towards paving your street. So, and then regarding the fence condition, some kind of verbiage to allow the neighbors to work out with the mayor, council, and the developer on if they want the fence or not, and how that should be maintained and appear.
We have a motion with conditions, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Anybody want to make comments before we vote? Let's take a vote then. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
All right. Get to hit you with some code again. Get comfortable.
Okay.
I'll keep it brief. Basically, we've got a proposed text amendment number 8 to the Snellville UDO. It's only been in place for about 4 or 5 years, so it just goes to show you how things change in this environment. Just when you think you got it figured out, it changes. And here we are. This is the 8th one in 5 years, so it's very much a living document. Just like the zoning ordinance, it changes to meet the needs of the community and the citizens. And based over some comments we've gotten specifically from mayor and council and some of the other things we've seen in the last year or so, we're here to propose a few amendments. One of the major amendments is what we just saw on the previous application is the actual requirement and for rear entry garages with alley access for all single-family attached buildings, basically taking it away as a choice and making it a requirement, thus requiring a variance at the time of if you want to develop in another way from mayor and council or board of appeals, which is the exact opposite of how it exists now. Just so you know, it's a flipper. That's fine. We've also, another major amendment that we have is to try to provide some clarity and consistency for our special event venues, wedding caterers, smaller events. Previously, under this use, we haven't really had a lot of large facilities, but there has been a struggle with dealing with catering and providing just reception type alcohol events, wine, beer. We didn't have a mechanism for that, and really can't have an event venue without food and some libations, I feel. Also, the city is getting into, we will have a special event facility as well above The brewery will have a rentable space, ultimately be managed by someone else, but be owned by the city. So we need to make sure that everybody's playing by the same rules, including us. So we amended the definition, and also we added some specific requirements as far as parking. We thought was very important, provisions of alcohol serving, and we won't get into that here, but basically the provisions provide that they have to be licensed through the city to serve the alcohol, but ultimately the caterers will be the ones that will have the license to actually perform the service. What we don't want to have in a special event, and why we've codified this, is the pop-up club, the pop-up event where somebody has a special event venue. They also have a liquor license. They open it up to the public for 24 hours, kind of spirals out of control, and it leads to unsafe environments. So with these regulations in place, it lets everybody know exactly what the expectations are, requires security at large events, and also puts the eye on the onus on the owner to make sure that the caterers are licensed, and they let the city know for major events that there'll be larger events with alcohol served. That kind of takes care of that. Those specific requirements are located in your change if you want to look at them a little bit more. We've added, with the new addition of medical cannabis dispensaries and the medical marijuana use in Georgia, right now there's only two. Two of those in the state, I believe. One's in Macon and the other one's somewhere in northeast Georgia. But we wanted to provide the provision because the state has a definition. We didn't want to get caught with something that is in between and we can't make sure that we can regulate it because it's a sensitive issue. We don't expect to see one in Snellville for a while. They're very protected, and they dole them out very, very slowly at the state. And a response as well, not the same thing but similar, is the CBD store. Currently, you're allowed to sell those CBD products in most other retail environments as an add-on. You see them at pharmacies, you see them at your corner store, and all this does is allow for a store that is selling the same thing to basically be allowed, as defined by the state and the city, to operate as basically a CBD store without any kind of special requirement. We also added to the use table a food truck, which is a base of operation, not a food truck to travel the city, because city leaders still feel like those should be tied to temporary events and not necessarily just to roam around. But what it does allow is for a property to become a base of operations, which is a requirement of a food truck license. You have to have somewhere to prepare the foods and store the foods that you're not going to have on the truck, and it's all regulated by health and the Gwinnett, Rockdale environmental health as far as food service goes. So we're adding that into LM as a principal permitted use. We've actually had some interest from some local businesses for that use, so we want to provide that for them. We've amended the definitions for temporary shelters to include certain religious shelters, to allow them to maintain them for over 30 days, up to a certain amount of time, under certain circumstances. We've seen that come up more and more with from your basic pergolas into more just new structures, and we want to make sure we have specific requests that they called, can I do this? And we want to allow the opportunity for everyone to express themselves and with reasonable time frames. Temporary structure, meaning I think less than 6 weeks. We also added regulations and requirements for dumpster enclosure to include a side entry door instead of just 2 front doors, to hopefully combat against some of these open gates that we see with trash overflowing. The dumpster gets stuck, they can't put it back in. We've seen it unfortunately right here at the town center. Hopefully a side door will allow commercial vendors, or even residential in some cases, to enter in, not have to pull the big gates open. We hope that helps. It's a small change, but one that was felt necessary. And we also, in regards to single-family attached products, and some detached uses have amended the code to basically account for overflow parking, especially in a townhome environment, and how that's to be standardized and counted. Basically, you get this many units, you got to provide this many spaces, whether that's in the garage or on the driveway. And we mirrored some other ordinances. John did a really good job of kind of fitting in what we had and what we need, and that's part of this too. A summary of these, there's 18 proposed amendments, just to show you if you change a few things, it affects everything. We had amendments to Article 1, 2, 5, 6 of Chapter 200 just for those few changes. So everything's attached to something else. Mr. Dennis does a great job of capturing all those. With that in mind, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we kindly recommend approval of the amendments.
With the potential for the federal government to legalize marijuana, would it be easier to strike the word medical and just say cannabis dispensary, so then you don't have to create new laws and separate it, or would you rather leave it as what the state has now?
Yeah, I think the direction that we got ultimately from the mayor and council and the city attorney in regards to, let's get something in place. If we need to change it down the road with changing legislation, let's do it at that time. I think everybody's just trying to be uber conservative at this point.
Any other questions? Thanks, sir. Commissioners, anything to talk about? Yeah. I will, see, I keep leaving them out, don't I? I'll try to be better. All right. Hey, all I can do is get better. I open the floor to public hearing. Anybody in favor of these adjustments and amendments to the UDO, please come forward. No one's coming forward. Anybody in opposition to these changes to the UDO? No one's coming forward, so I will close the public hearing on that.
Motion to approve UDO 25-01 as stated.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Now a vote? Aye. All in favor? Thank you.
Just one quick announcement.
Please.
We'll have the tabled meeting next month. Again, I'd like to welcome Mr. Windsor to the Planning Commission, and appreciate your time tonight.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I will
Second?
second that.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.